We're about to ask ourselves one question, crucial question actually. Is trust really necessary? And to learn more about it, I'm really happy to be joined on stage by Xavier LORPHELIN, managing partner at Serena Capital. Xavier, good morning to you.
Hi, Marjorie. Hello, everybody.
So is trust really necessary?
Yes, I think it's a very interesting topic, and what I will do is I will make a quick introduction on why do we need to rebuild trust, and then we'll have two great speakers on stage, Isabelle Fac-Peretin, who is the chairwoman of the Data Protection Authority, the CNIL, and then Nicolas Sekaki, who is the general manager at IBM France. So what I will do is in 5 minutes just give some quick data and introduce the topic. So the first thing is you all know that data is exploding. I mean, we're producing more and more data. That's obvious for everybody. Just one number. Each of us produce each day 3 gigaoctets of new data. I think this number is so huge that at the end is meaningless. You don't know really what it means. But what's more important, it raises two questions beyond this number. The first one is, do you know what kind of data you're sharing? And in fact, when you ask that to this question to consumers, it turns out that most of the consumers, they know that they're sharing data with their service providers, but at the end, they don't know what kind of data they're sharing. And you have some percentage there. 14%, 14% of consumers only know that they're sharing their web surfing history through cookies. And 25% of consumers only know that they're sharing their location information. So there is definitely a problem about information of consumers, education of consumers. And because of all the different security breaches, at the end, there's a big issue regarding trust. There is mistrust and not confidence in the service providers that you use as a consumer. And on the left part, you have a chart where the question was, how much do you trust your service providers? How much do you trust them in the sense that your records will remain private and secure? So the results are not very surprising. At the top end, you have the credit card companies. People tend to trust them at only 37%. And at the bottom end, you have the online advertisers. They're only trusted by less than 10% of the population. Oops, sorry.
There's the clicker.
The quick one.
Yep.
Sorry, I got it. So because of that, the first question is that we can ask ourselves is, do we need specific regulation to address that? And I think the answer is yes. And what's interesting also is in that topic, Europe is really leading the game. So we'll have a presentation just after on that specific topic. But just to get the context again, I'm sure you know that there was a major regulation that was adopted in Europe in May, which is the European General Data Protection Regulation, what we call the GDPR. And at the same time also, there was a privacy shield that was agreed between the US and Europe. And what does the privacy shield? It provides a kind of framework and mechanism for companies to comply with European data protection regulation when there are some consumer data transfer from Europe to the US. And if we go further, and there's a little map on the bottom, I'm not going to comment it, but it's a map showing where do we stand in each country in data protection regulation. But in fact, what's interesting is, as I said, Europe is leading the way, and several countries outside Europe are looking at what Europe is doing and moving towards the Europe standard in terms of data protection. I just gave a quick example here with South Korea. They adopted in March a regulation regarding penalties, where penalties related to data privacy violation will be quite similar, in fact, very similar to what has been adopted by the European standard. And the penalty is quite huge. I'm not sure if you're aware of that, but it can go up to 4% of your global revenues worldwide, which it's quite a big amount. Then the question is about the US. What's going on in the US? In the US, there was a tradition of self-regulation. And it's still that way, but it starts to change. And in fact, it's interesting because a few days ago, I don't know if you noticed that, but there was a news about the fact that the FCC adopted a new regulation regarding data privacy. Usually, it should be the competency of the FTC that does this kind of regulation. So it raised a lot of questions in the US about that topic, but the FCC decided to pass a regulation where ISP providers need to provide some kind of protection rules to their consumers. It's a kind of opt-in mechanism for their consumers. So now the question is, once we have seen all what's happening in terms of regulation, is, as a company, do I need to comply to that? And how to comply with this regulation? Well, the first question is, yes, you have to comply. And you have 2 years to comply in Europe. But 2 years is going to come very quickly. So by May 2018, you're supposed to comply with this new regulation. And if you don't comply, again, as I said, you can have penalties that can go up to 4% of your revenues. So yes, you have to comply. The thing is, where do we stand now as companies in terms of preparation to this regulation? There was a survey from Symantec that was released again a few days ago, called the State of the European Data Privacy Survey 2016, that shows that, in fact, 96% of businesses in UK, Germany, and France are not prepared to this regulation. And in fact, if you go further in the numbers, the report shows also that nearly 1 in 10 companies said in this survey that all employees in their organization can access customers' personal information. And there's another thing that I didn't put there, is when you ask these businesses, do you think data privacy is an important topic for your consumers, for your customers? Most of these companies said, no, it's not the main subject for my customers, which in fact is not the reality. So companies, you need to have to comply to regulation, but in fact, compliance is not enough. You need to go beyond that. And there's been already some talks about that earlier this morning. There are new concepts about privacy by design, which was described just before in the previous talk. Privacy by design means that you need to change, as a company, you need to change the way you're going to develop your new services or your application. So it's a big change. But in fact, when you think about it, changing the way you develop your product and services means that you need to change your culture as an organization. You need to change your whole organization, and you probably need to change the business processes, and maybe at the end, you need to change your business model. So as a company, what do I need to do as a first step to rebuild this trust with my consumers? The first thing is, and there's been numerous studies about that, is you need to be transparent to your customers. Transparency about how you use data and how you protect your consumers. And it has been said before in the Accenture presentation. Here, I'll just give you a quick example. I went to the Apple website. I don't know if you tried that recently, but there is a privacy page on the Apple website. If you go there, there is a nice speech from Tim Cook. And the first sentence is, at Apple, your trust means everything to us. So it's quite interesting to see what it means. And you will see behind that there's a lot of things about transparency. And to finish, and if you want to go further on this topic, there's been a very interesting research from Harvard Business Review, and the link is there. And they found that there are three key principles that companies need to embrace if they want to rebuild trust with their consumers. The first one is you need to teach your customers. Remember I said that your customers, they're not educated. So you need to teach them. You need to explain them what it means in terms of data usage. Then the second one is you need to give them control on the data they want to share with you. If you give them control, they will accept to give you access to some of their data. And then the third part is you need to deliver, and you need to show that you're delivering value based on this data that you're collecting and analyzing to provide a better service to your customers. So again, all these points, I think we're going to address them later in the, with the two speakers. Just as a conclusion. Sure. Sorry. Just as a conclusion, there's a lot of open questions I think that raises from this presentation. There's one question which is regarding security intelligence, which is also related to could be related to regulators. So what is the right balance between security intelligence? Every government wants to enforce that, and personal privacy. And who is going to be the garant of the right balance? Then there is a big question on data and harmonization of regulation. As I said, even though many countries are looking at what Europe is doing, there are still differences between countries. And when you're global companies, how are you going to harmonize your own data regulation policy so that you comply with all the different regulations? There is a question also that we can ask ourselves. Does the one-size-fits-all concept of regulation could work? And then a last question, which is about unfair competitive advantage or economic weapon. At the point of time, data regulation could become, if it's possible, and we'll give you some example later, could become some kind of economic weapon. I mean, you could protect your domestic market using data regulation to prevent external companies to do business because they're not compliant, because it's too costly for them to comply, and it's too difficult for them to comply. And last but not least, there is a question about innovation. It's particularly true in the US. The reason why it's self-regulated is in the US, they say that regulation is killing innovation. So there is definitely a question about what's the right balance between innovation and regulation. Thanks a lot.
And it's, of course, a question upcoming for Isabelle Falque-Pierrotin, who is going to join us on stage right now. Thank you so much, Xavier, for this introduction.